It was a Tuesday afternoon when Elon Musk decided to order a Taco Bell meal, when he suddenly halted after hearing two boys whisper something unbelievable behind him. For Elon, this Tuesday felt like it would never end. Meetings dragged on, emails accumulated, and significant decisions loomed over him like dark clouds. It was the kind of day where even the most driven minds, those constantly calculating fuel loads for Tesla spacecraft and discussing humanity's leap into the stars, felt somewhat drained. Sure, he was accustomed to the intensity of his schedule, but today even Elon found himself needing a moment to step away from it all. Sometimes even someone like Elon Musk, known for working 80 to 100 hours a week, needed a break. And that day he felt a peculiar urge that led him in a direction he hadn't anticipated. Fast food, but not just any fast food. Something specific, something a little indulgent. Taco Bell. It seemed absurd. This was the man who envisioned a future where cars drove themselves and humans lived on Mars. And here he was craving a Crunchwrap Supreme. But hey, even the wealthiest person on Earth needed a taco every now and then. There was something about it, perhaps nostalgic, that made him feel like an ordinary person for a few moments. It reminded him of his early days, long before the billions, long before Tesla, and long before rockets soared into space under his guidance. Back then, he wasn't all that different from any other young guy trying to navigate life, grabbing quick meals between coding marathons and engineering projects without overthinking it. He hopped into his Tesla and drove to the nearest Taco Bell. It wasn't far from his location, a typical suburban spot nestled between a convenience store and a strip mall. It was a place where no one would expect to see a billionaire casually walking in for a quick meal. That was precisely what Elon appreciated about it as his Tesla silently rolled into the parking lot. Elon found himself chuckling at the thought, what would the media say? Elon Musk ditches work for tacos. The headline would practically write itself. He stepped out of the car, looking more like an everyday guy than the titan of industry he was, dressed in a simple black hoodie and jeans. Elon wasn't the eccentric billionaire most people anticipated. He had a talent for being understated in public, especially when he was on his own like today. No security detail, no assistants buzzing around him with phone calls or messages. Just Elon and his hunger. As he walked into the restaurant, the familiar bell above the door chimed. Inside, it was exactly what you'd expect from any Taco Bell. A few customers sitting in booths, the smell of seasoned beef and cheese wafting in the air, and the hum of a soda machine in the background. No one seemed to notice him as he entered, at least not yet. He approached the counter and gave the menu a quick look, already knowing what he wanted. Sure, he was there to clear his mind, but that didn't mean he had all day. A Crunchwrap Supreme was his go-to, and today he decided to order two because, why not? Before he could place his order, the cashier behind the counter did a double take. She recognized that face, and for a moment she froze, unsure if she was imagining things. It wasn't every day that the guy behind SpaceX and Tesla walked into your Taco Bell, after all. But she managed to regain her composure, giving him a nervous smile. "Hi, welcome to Taco Bell. What can I get for you?" she said hesitantly. Elon noticed and returned a small, reassuring smile. He wasn't in the mood for any attention. Just food. "I'll have 2 Crunchwrap Supremes," he said simply. The cashier entered the order, trying to act normal, though the entire interaction felt surreal to her. She handed him his receipt and informed him it would be just a few minutes. As Elon waited, he did what most people do when trying to pass the time. He let his mind wander, thinking about the week ahead. SpaceX had some significant milestones approaching with Starship, Tesla's new AI project was going full throttle, and his latest thoughts about tunneling systems with the Boring Company were taking shape. There was always so much to manage, but in these small moments, it felt good to focus on something simple. It was like hitting the reset button on his mind. He noticed a few customers coming and going, but none seemed to recognize him. He appreciated the anonymity. For someone constantly in the spotlight, it was rare to have a moment of peace in public. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching him. But it was after he finished ordering his Taco Bell meal that he stopped cold. Why? Because he overheard 2 boys discussing something that went beyond even Elon's wildest dreams. He stood frozen for a moment, the words from the boys' conversation drifting into his awareness. His hand hovered over the counter as he reached for his wallet. But something in their tone made him hesitate. Initially, he had barely paid attention, assuming it was just the usual chatter of teenagers. but now their voices carried a different weight. He turned his head slightly, just enough to hear them more clearly without making it obvious that he was listening. One of the boys, his voice barely more than a whisper, spoke rapidly, trying to keep his excitement and nerves in check.
"We have to do it tonight," the boy said urgently.
"If we don't, Mom's not going to get better." Elon blinked, his focus sharpening. He hadn't expected to hear that. The other boy, his brother apparently, responded quietly this time.
"But what if we get caught?"
"You know what they do to people who steal. It'll make everything worse."
Steal, the word hit Elon like a punch.
He glanced over at them more directly, and from his new angle he could see them better. They were just kids, no older than 13 or 14 years. There they sat, hunched over their table, as though carrying a burden far too heavy for their small shoulders.
The older boy, clearly the leader, leaned in closer to his brother.
"It's just the cash from the register. No one will know. We need it, and I don't know how else we can get the money." Elon's mind raced. This wasn't the usual kind of mischief teenagers get into. This was different. He could sense the desperation in the older boy's voice, the kind that comes when you run out of options and don't know where to turn. That mention of their mom. Something wasn't right. Elon's instincts kicked in. He had witnessed a lot in his life, both the triumphs and tragedies of human experience.
He understood what fear sounded like, and this wasn't just two kids discussing a prank or getting into trouble. This was about survival. They were scared, and considering doing something that could ruin their lives forever.
The cashier handed Elon his food, and he nodded absent-mindedly, not really paying attention. His focus was entirely on the two boys now, trying to piece together their conversation. The younger boy's voice wavered. "I don't want to do this. What if someone gets hurt?" The older one took a deep breath. "We'll be fast. In and out. No one gets hurt, I promise. We'll just grab the cash, and then we'll have enough to pay for the medicine."
Medicine. That was it. That was the key. Their mother wasn't just sick. She needed medicine, and fast. Elon felt a tug deep in his chest, an emotion he didn't often acknowledge. Empathy. He stood there for a few seconds, processing everything. What was he supposed to do? Couldn't just walk out and pretend he hadn't heard. But he also couldn't march up to them and confront them either. They'd panic, maybe even run out and do something reckless. He had to handle this delicately. Elon Musk is many things, but at his core, he is someone who believes in solving problems, no matter how impossible they seem. Right now, these boys had a problem that needed fixing before they did something that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. He turned back toward the cashier and quickly made a decision. "Hey, can you do me a favor?" he asked, his voice low. The cashier blinked at him, confused but willing to help. "Could you add 2 more crunch wraps to my order? I'll pay for them now." The cashier nodded, her hands moving quickly to enter the order. As she did, Elon turned to the boys, taking a deep breath. He was going to approach this carefully, like a puzzle he needed to solve without scaring them off. With his bag in hand and a calm expression, he made his way toward their table.
The boys didn't notice him at first. They were too wrapped up in their anxious planning. But as Elon stepped closer, the older boy's head snapped up, his eyes wide as he realized who was standing there. Elon smiled gently, doing his best to appear non-threatening. "Hey guys," he said casually, holding up the bag. "Mind if I sit here for a moment? I ordered a bit too much food, and I thought you might want to help me out with these crunch wraps."
The boys exchanged a nervous glance. They were clearly starstruck, but the tension in their bodies hadn't eased. They were still on edge, ready to bolt at any moment, but the promise of food, and perhaps just the shock of Elon Musk standing in front of them, made them hesitate. Sure," the older boy said, though his voice was uncertain. Elon sat down across from them, setting the bag on the table and pulling out the extra crunch wraps. He placed one in front of each boy. They stared at the food, confused but also tempted. It was hard to think straight when you were a kid and hadn't eaten properly. He let them unwrap their food before saying anything else. His calm, measured approach seemed to work as the boys slowly took a few bites, though their nerves were still visible. "So," Elon started, his voice still casual, "I couldn't help but overhear a bit of your conversation. Sounds like you guys are dealing with something pretty tough." The boys froze mid-bite, their faces paling, and the older one immediately went on the defensive. "We weren't doing anything wrong," he said quickly, his voice tight. "We were just talking, that's all." Elon nodded, still calm.
I get it. You're not in trouble. I just want to help. I heard you mention your mom. She's sick, right? The younger boy's eyes welled up with tears, but he tried to blink them away. The older boy, clearly trying to protect his brother, swallowed hard and nodded reluctantly. Yeah, he said, his voice thick with emotion.
She's really sick. She needs this medicine, and we don't have the money. We've tried everything. Elon's heart clenched. These kids were barely teenagers, yet here they were, carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders, trying to find a way to save their mom. They were desperate and terrified.
We don't want to steal, the older boy continued with a shaky voice. But we don't know what else to do. We're out of options. Elon leaned in slightly, his gaze steady and filled with understanding. Look, I know you're scared. I know it feels like there's no way out. But trust me when I say that taking that path, robbing this place, it won't fix anything. It'll only make things worse for you and your mom. The older boy dropped his gaze, tears brimming in his eyes. But what else can we do? The medicine is expensive, and the bills keep piling up. We can't lose her.
Elon took a deep breath, knowing he had to tread carefully.
I can help, he said softly. I've been fortunate in life. I've built businesses, sure, but I've also seen how hard it can be for people, how it feels to be desperate and out of options. Let me help you. Let me help your mom. The boys looked at him in disbelief. They couldn't process what he was saying. Why would Elon Musk, the man of the moment, want to help them? You're serious? The older boy asked. Elon nodded earnestly. Look, you don't have to go through this alone. There are ways to get help without putting yourselves or your future at risk. I can help cover the medical costs and get your mom the medicine she needs. You don't need to steal. You don't need to carry this burden by yourselves.
For a moment, there was nothing but silence between them. The boys stared at Elon, their eyes wide with hope and disbelief.
Slowly, the older boy's shoulders sagged as the weight of his burden began to lift, even if just a little. You'd really do that? The younger boy finally asked. You'd help us? Elon smiled warmly. Yeah, I'd really do that. And you know what? I don't want anything in return. I just want you to keep doing what you're doing. Taking care of each other, taking care of your mom. That's all that matters.
The older boy's lip trembled, and for the first time since Elon had approached them, he let out a shaky breath. Thank you, he whispered, tears finally spilling over. Elon reached across the table and gave the boy's shoulder a reassuring squeeze. You're going to be okay, he said quietly. We'll figure this out together.
And in that moment, Elon knew that this was exactly where he was meant to be. Not in a boardroom, not on a conference call, but right here, helping these kids when they needed it the most. So finally, do you think it was Elon's instincts that guided him to this moment? And do you know any other heartwarming stories like this? If you do, we'd love to hear your thoughts, so please leave a comment below. If you liked this video, leave a like, subscribe, and help us bring you more exciting stories involving celebrities.
Here you will be updated every day on the world of celebrities.
See you soon.